it obviously starts from the moment they like interact with your brand because you're speaking something into them. So even though your website, it should be an extension of what is going to happen within the four walls. So it does start the moment they're interacting. Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We're here to lead you on the way.
Welcome back to the Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast with the amazing Dr. Lona and myself, Dr. Bobby. Dr. Lona, what's going on, lady? How's your day?
Hey, it's going great. We had a busy week last week and back in the practice today, and things are going great. How about you, Bobby?
And they are amazing. So we're just coming fresh on the break of Easter here. And one of the things I've been talking to a lot of people yesterday was Tuesday, my first day back. And a lot of people were like, yeah, we still went back to the office and we're working on Saturday or we're working on Good Friday. Not us. So our leadership team, at least in the office, we were like, all right, we made a point to make sure everyone had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off. So 4 full days because we had a massive first quarter. Like our first quarter was amazing. But of course, when you're like us and you have a big heart and a big purpose, you're head down, bum up. And so it's important to take time off as well. So I'm pumped now. I'm fresh on the back of 4 days, ready to rock and roll and head down, bum up, ready for a massive Q2. Did you get some time off again?
Oh, that's so good. Yes, I had Friday off and I actually turned 40 over the weekend. So we had a big party and then, of course, Easter. So
Ooh, happy birthday. Big 4-0, huh?
Yes. So
Nice.
we had a good weekend.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, so I'm not sure about you guys, but in my office, we really try and make a point of this idea called week 13. And week 13 is like 12 weeks, you go head down, bum up, hard. Like literally it's like head down and we really kind of grow. And then you have time off, right? So whether that's in this example, 4 or 5 days off, sometimes it's a week off. Sometimes I go to Europe for 4 weeks, right? But this idea of week 13, hard for 12 weeks and then have like that week off. It's a big culture we have inside my office. Do you guys have that as well?
Oh, I love that. We actually do more of a summer thing here because, we're in the seasons and we have the ability within our practice structure where we have a little bit of extra wiggle room in the summertime. So it doesn't matter what seat you are on the team in the summer, you're taking 1 or 2 weeks off for sure so that we can get regrouped there. But yes, I love a good quarter start and a good quarter end. So I love that concept, the week 13. I like that.
Week 13. I think we'll have to do an episode on it one day. There you go. You guys heard it here first. Keep the saw sharp. I think it was Stephen Covey who first said that in Highly Effective People, right? You got to keep the saw sharp and then you'll keep chopping down more wood, right?
So true. So true.
All right, team. So today we are talking about retention. In fact, I find this a very interesting topic. And Dr. Lona, I know you and I were having conversations about this earlier, but quite frankly, in chiropractic, you see so many seminars on attraction, marketing, new patients. How do we get newies into the door? We see a stack of events and focus that goes into conversion, day 1, day 2 processes, day 3, depending on how you do it, right? There's all this effort into conversion. Yet, if you look inside of my office and you ask me, which people in your office, Dr. Obi, get the best results and the best outcomes when it comes to their care and it comes to their health? The answer for me is really easy. And it's those that have been with us long term. So I ask you and I implore you to look at your office and I ask you the question, are the people that get the best office under the best care and the best outcomes in your office, are they the people that have been with you for a long time? Because if the answer to that question is, yes, actually it is, then really, I feel as though we're missing the mark here. And I feel as though our effort and our energy needs to go into mastering this thing called retention. How do we actually create relationships with people, maintain long-term relationships with people so that they can get more from chiropractic? Because I believe that the more that you engage in chiropractic, the more that you get from chiropractic. I believe that we get, sure, some results in the short term, but the best results over the long term. So Dr. Lona, I'd love to talk about this conversation today, and I'd really love to get your insight on this. What have you found in your practice when it comes to retention, when it comes to creating clarity, because we say retention is a reflection of your clarity? What's been your experience with retention? Equally, have you had that same experience that we see so many chiropractors that put energy on the front end, but then completely forget the back end?
Yeah. Bobby, I think whoever's listening to this should replay what you just said there for the last 5 minutes, because there's a lot of good nuggets in there of just like thinking about what you offered us up to kind of focus on is who's getting the best results. What's been our own journey? You know, most of us didn't, even if we came from a chiropractic family, now being, you know, chiropractic geeks doing this thing called chiropractic business, it's been a journey for us. So of course, for those practice members or those patients, it's going to be a journey too. So I think you brought up some really good subluxations we have in our profession, which is that, you know, we tend to focus, and probably that's because we are generally self-starters in practice, where we do need to focus on bringing new patients in. And at the same time, equal amounts of energy and effort and forethought needs to go into what happens when I start this journey with this practice member or this patient. Like, how do I clearly lead them through a process so that they can access the goods that chiropractic delivers on, which is a process. So that word process should be used in a lot of your thinking about, yes, they matriculate through day 1, day 2, day 3, but what does the process look like when they're a month in, 3 months in, 4 months in, a year in? Like, how do I stay engaged so that I'm still leading them through that? And I was actually having this conversation earlier with a marketing team, and I was newly meeting them. So I was explaining about our brand and who we are, and you could see light bulbs going off in their head. And I think that's such a big part of this, is that, you know, you think about all that chiropractic opens up for us and looking at life differently, the chiropractic lifestyle, if you will. That's not going to happen just in one visit. So it is a journey you're going on with them. But if you don't start the journey with them and have a vision for it, which is the clarity, you know, how are people going to buy in?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, in the Remarkable Practice, guys, we say that your retention will be a reflection of your clarity. Okay. And I really want you to think about that, because when you hear the word clarity, what does that mean for you? And we'll talk about this later on, but if you have clarity, it starts with you as the leader. Exactly what does your care look like? What are the objectives? What are the different phases? Okay, what's the benefit of each stage of care? Then you can train your team to have that clarity, so you guys are all speaking the same message. And then, and only then, are you going to be able to train your practice members to have that clarity as well. Because quite interesting, Dr. Lona, maybe about 6, 7 years ago, I made it a point to try and find out, okay, why do people drop out of care? So early in my practice years, we used to do a ton of screenings. Like, there was one stage where we were really cranking. I would say we'd be screening every single week. And on the front lines, when you're screening, you get to talk to a lot of people. And it was interesting because I would always ask people the question, have you seen a chiropractor before? And what I found is that more often than not, the answer that I got was, yes, I have, right? Like, oh yeah, I've seen a chiropractor before. And of the people that had seen a chiropractor before, more often than not, most of the time, the answer would be, yeah, I was happy, it was good. Okay. Even if I felt as though the care they were getting, okay, they didn't get maybe certain protocols done. They didn't get, you know, whatever it was, like scans, exams. I was like, great, the person was happy, awesome, fantastic. And then I'd ask them this question: why did you stop seeing them? Whenever I'd ask that question, their face would go blank for a moment. They'd pause, and here's what they would say, right? Some form of this: I just got lost where I was up to. Or it would sound something like this sometimes. After a while, it just got really repetitive. Or sometimes it would sound like this. You ready? After a while, it just sounded like she was saying to me, just come back next week, come back next week, come back next week, see you in 2 weeks, see you in 2 weeks. But what I was getting out of it, Dr. Lona, is people would get lost. They didn't have clarity about where they're up to and what's the benefits of continual care. Is that what you found?
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think it's one of the ways we don't steward people well, when we're putting too much emphasis on the front end and when we're building our team around this process of chiropractic, is like, we can lose track of people sometimes, and that's on us, right? Like, we can't do the healing for them, but we can make sure our systems and the container that we're providing to deliver the goods in the process gets as good as possible. And some of that is knowing, like, your people and tracking them and knowing what stage of care they're in, and if they missed an adjustment, who's reaching out to them, all these things that you have to start to think about when it's like, how do we help them access good care, and what is the plan actually that they're on here? And I think a lot of chiropractors don't think about that. They get them started and then it gets really nebulous.
Yeah, I know, right? Totally right. We're thinking about the short term, let's get them over the line, and then I'll try and get them over the line. So here's a question. I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I know that you have great insight, great responses to this. Someone would say to me, all right, Dr. Dobby, so give me like one or two key insights that's the key to retention. So I'm someone right now, I'm listening to this podcast, and yes, I've recognized that I have an issue with retention in my office. In fact, I think in the profession, the average PVA, patient visit, how many times someone will see you through their careers, roughly, depending on where you read, but it's usually sitting somewhere between like 8 to 12, 8 to 15. So I'm someone that's listening to this, Lona, and I'm like, yes, I want to improve my retention. What's one key thing, maybe headspace or mindset wise, that I've got to get right first before we start to dive into the systems and process and procedure? What advice would you give? What would you say?
Right. Well, I'm going to circle back to some of our earlier podcasts, which we're talking about like the foundation of, what you believe about chiropractic. And we have to start with ourselves, like if I know that I will get adjusted for the rest of my life at a pretty frequent basis. So for myself, I get checked at least once a week. How did I get to my understanding where that's what I do for myself and I do for my family, right? Someone had to educate me and help me see it. And then I had to access the benefit. So I can't pour from myself something I don't own internally. And I think, we have to ask ourselves that hard question. Am I even walking my own talk? Right? Like I can't lead patients places I don't go. And so, some of the profession maybe isn't there in their own foundational ways that they take care of themselves and their nervous system, and understanding the process of chiropractic and what it offers you, not only in a symptomatic way, but in a lifestyle and supporting your nervous system to be adaptable and resilient. But once you know that, right, and you're doing that for yourself, then how do you lead someone through that? So I think you got to start with yourself first. And if that means you're driving an hour to get a solid adjustment, it'll pay off in not only your own nervous system regulation, but also like when you're walking your talk, there's something very powerful about that in how you deliver your message to other people then.
Really interesting. Yeah, I think you're spot on the mark there. I was actually having a conversation on a coaching call around this yesterday, and I was talking to this chiropractor, and they were saying how, okay, I want to grow my practice. They were talking about a number of volume that they want to get to. And it was so interesting because for a while, she was saying, hey, I've been stuck on this level, and I want to get to this level, right? I've got a new associate. There's two of us now there. I'm ready to grow. I want to be able to like get to this level. And I was hearing this coming out of her mouth all the time. And what I asked her was like, okay, tell me the why behind that level. What's the why? Why do you want to get to X amount of visits a week? And she paused for a second. And all the responses that she gave were around, well, I just think that will be busy enough then for what I want our practice to be, and support the life that I want to have, and, get enough income where I don't have to worry about my finances every day and my mortgage every day and, my repayments every day. And when she finished speaking, one of the things that I recognized is that it was all about her. Yeah, when I asked her the question, hey, do you get regularly checked and adjusted? Are you on a care plan? A recommendation from a chiropractor, your chiropractor, that's gone through a protocol like what you guys do, that gives you a recommendation of care, and then are you following that schedule? And her answer was no, she's not. And it was interesting because one of the things that I said to her is the most powerful whys that we come up with as humans are actually whys that are linked to other people and not linked to us. Because if the why is about, I want to get busier, I want to see more, I want to earn more, I want to make my mortgage repayments easier, that's all about you. Whereas if you're truly under care and you're understanding how that helps you perform better as a human being and stay healthy and optimize your function long-term, then what you truly start to make is just transition your mindset that it's actually not about me at all. It's actually not about me at all. It's about the principle, and it's about others. Because when I figured out this principle and I had my breakthrough moment, what the instant thought in my mind that went through is, shit, people need to know this. Mm-hmm. People need to know this. And your attention is a reflection of your clarity. So if you're clear with it, okay, then you're going to be able to start to install systems in your practice that's going to help other people get clear with it and have the breakthrough. Because for me, retention is about relationships, right? Retention should equal relationships. So how do we build meaningful long-term relationships? Well, in order for someone to keep doing something, right? So if they've never done it before in their life, they've come into your office, it made sense to them what you said to them. They've turned into a believer. But now the only way for them to keep doing something long-term, right, forever, quite frankly, is if they have a breakthrough, right? They need to have a breakthrough or realization. I'd love to hear, Dr. Lona, for you. So do you remember your first adjustment, or even deeper than that, do you remember like the moment that you had the breakthrough that you realized, wait, chiropractic is not just a short-term solution. Chiropractic actually has deeper impacts in terms of optimizing somebody's nervous system, therefore health, and therefore it's a long-term solution. Do you remember the moment that you had that breakthrough in your journey?
I think I've had different like revolutions of my breakthrough, if that makes sense. So I grew up getting adjusted. So I was actually a colicky baby that had my first adjustment. So I don't remember it. But
Okay.
I definitely was instilled with the like foundational belief that chiropractic is normal. Like everybody goes to the chiropractor. That's what I thought. And then I remember somewhere early on in my like education where I realized like this is about the nervous system. Like I didn't get that. I just knew it was good for me, right? So that was where I began, and it was enough that I was intrigued by it to go to chiropractic school. And then as I was learning, like it was like, wait a second. The whole reason we're working on the spine is because of the nervous system. Like, oh my gosh, it's so much more exciting, right? And then the real breakthrough that happened for me is recognizing, and maybe this is deeper than a lot of people go, but getting into like what I believe is like D.D. Palmer's chiropractic, which is man spiritual to man physical, and how much more interconnected everything in our life is to a, a nervous system that's balanced, what like alignment really means, not just alignment physically, but alignment with like what's bigger than you. And like that's when it just like blew my socks off of like this, that chiropractic is about like humanity's potential. And our nervous system is how we're responding and adapting to everything happening in our lives, both physical and mental, emotional, and spiritual. And then that's when I really started to dive down the rabbit hole of like, I believe this work is like higher calling work. And that's when we got really fired up about finding all the ways to serve it out to our community and speak it on platforms.
So can I ask you, because that's a really cool story. Can I ask you, do you remember the exact moment you said, you realized, you had a couple of realizations? Two key words that I've picked up there that you wrote is education. And I started to educate myself, and I'm going to come back to this in a second. And then you had a realization. So you learned something and then you had a breakthrough. Okay. Do you remember like the moment that you had the breakthrough? Do you remember the moment when you were like, oh my goodness, okay, I understand what Dee Dee's talking about here is a spiritual connection, and we have that interconnectedness in all areas of our life, including our health, including our body, and it's all governed through our nervous system. Do you remember like the moment that you had that specific moment?
Yeah, kind of, because what was happening was simultaneously I was going deeper in chiropractic philosophy,
Ah,
which was still very
got it.
physical to me. And then I was also learning about success mindset and manifestation and law of attraction. And all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, they're talking about the same thing. Like we're electromagnetic beings, and everything that we're experiencing is in the category of kind of ease and dis-ease. And the nervous system is our clearinghouse. And that's when it was like, so
Got it.
I think it was probably like year 3 or 4 in practice. And,
All
and
right.
that's when it started to scale.
All right,
Mm-hmm.
guys, take note, because there is a very, very massive golden nugget here. There's something to be learned, and I'm going to tell you exactly what it is in a few minutes' time, because I had almost identical experience. Now, here we go. We got two people on different ends of the spectrum. You were getting adjusted as a colicky baby, correct?
Correct.
I received my first adjustment as a 21-year-old, just about to start studying chiropractic, right? So you have two different people, someone who grew up with chiropractic in the household, another person that has not grown up in the household at all. Now in my house, there's 6 chiropractors, right? But interesting thing you said, my breakthrough realization coming out of mechanical school was very similar. I thought chiropractic was a mechanical thing that was good for, getting movement back in people's bodies, quite frankly. In fact, I was even told in my final year of study, don't ever adjust a degenerated spine, right? And I was like, well, hang on a second. Isn't that what we're supposed to adjust? Spines that don't move properly, right? That didn't make any sense to me. But I remember the moment, me too. And it was funny because education led to realization. So I was listening to a podcast. The podcast, I believe, was one of my good friends, mentors, Dr. Patrick Chentemper, and he was talking to the amazing CJ Mertz. And they said something that had to do with the nervous system and the spine. And I had this moment. I remember the room that I was in. I was sitting in an office. I'd already graduated as a chiropractor, working as my first associateship 2 months in the city. And I had this moment of like, oh my goodness, what you're saying is that your nervous system governs and runs and runs all function of the body. And so if your spine is jacked up, just like if you have major head trauma, if you have micro traumas that lead to interference in the nervous system, that's going to interfere with your expression of life. Got it. I had a realization, right? And from that moment on, I was like, all right, now is the I understand why I need to be getting just ongoing checked regularly. Because if my nervous system is functioning at optimal, I'm functioning at my optimal, right? So really interesting lesson here. We both had, I'm going to come back to two words that I wrote down: education, which led to a breakthrough or a realization. So we say in your office, in order for someone to stay under care, okay, retention to increase, we need to take believers, people who believed you. So you converted them in the report of findings because they believed you, right? They believed what you're saying. And we need to take believers and turn them into understanders. So understanders are people like Dr. Lona and myself who understand it and get it and are like, oh my goodness, this totally makes sense. We didn't see it before. We had a blind spot around it. Now we've illuminated a blind spot, otherwise known as a breakthrough, right? And if you could take believers and turn them into understanders, then getting checked and adjusted long-term ongoing just makes complete sense, right? So on that, I'd love to dive deeper in this. What are the systems? So, all right, beautiful. This is making sense to me. I've got clarity now, okay? Tell me now, how do I do that? How do I take believers and turn them into understanders? I heard a key word before, education. And maybe you've heard of that before. You could install education into your practice. But give me some specifics now, Lona. What do systems look like? How do I take people in my office, turn them from believers into understanders? How do you do this in your office?
Well, it obviously starts from the moment they like interact with your brand, because you're speaking something into them. So even your website, it should be an extension of what is going to happen within the four walls. So it does start the moment they're interacting. But of course, as let's say they've already come in, they've already had their day one, their day two has laid out what the beginning path looks like. So I'm not here to tell you exactly how that should go, but most likely you're laying out a frequency of an adjustments and a certain amount of time that's happening over, because we know this is a process, right? And because so much of this dance is this game between your right and left brain too, it's like we want to have findings and ways that we can show them that this is about their nervous system and this process of adaptation and creating more resiliency in the body. So whatever that is, again, in your technique and the way that you're going to do an analysis, you're going to show them that you're going to come back and measure it again. So people want to be held accountable. And that's part of where I think we drop the ball with most people, is we don't lay out a clear expectation of how to begin, number of visits over time, and where the measurements are going to come back in. And we're going to look at the goals that they said they had, our expectations of what it's going to take to get there, and come back in and check, have a checkpoint. So I think a lot of it is doing this relationship well, doing what we said we're going to do, and being clear about the way that you get started and the way that you progress down the path.
Oh, that is massive. I'm taking notes here. You said something there which was really key, and I see this as a huge hole when I speak with chiropractors and when I'm coaching calls. I hear this all the time. Examination processes. So many people, let's say, convert someone. A classic example of this: they'll use an X-ray as their primary conversion tool. All right, then they never re-X-ray again. Or, for example, they propagate a nervous system message. They say, oh, we're going to optimize function of the nervous system. Yet they don't have ways that they examine and test someone's nervous system function. And so all their progress reports in the future are done by orthopedic tests, range of motion tests, Kemp's maneuvers. Is that feeling better, right? But really, one part of what I heard you say there is a properly thought out and designed examination process. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Cool. Because we hear people say that your retention, right, is a reflection of your clarity, and that people need to get clarity about what's going on. And we always hear that education is key. So I look at our systems and I say that there's 3 systems that are really vital. And especially in those first initial months when someone starts care. And the first one, you hit the nail on the head. Because your examination process is absolutely key to this, because then first system is progress reports. How do you do your progress reports? And your progress reports are done on the examination findings and new findings that you're getting, right? The best outcomes, guys, in life, this is really key. If you're writing, I would write this down. If you're listening to this, I would make sure that I repeat this next 10 seconds, okay? The best outcomes in life, in anything, if you want to get better outcomes in anything, in your practice building, in your care in your office, all right, in your physical body, in whatever it is, the best outcomes happen on the other side of accountability. So do we have accountability systems in place? Because your progress reports are that. They're the ways that you're regularly checking in with somebody, taking new examination findings, like what Dr. Lona said, and then holding them accountable to how we're progressing. Are we on track? Are we off track? Or are we ahead of track? And you need examination process and systems that can give you that information with confidence, meaning you can have the confidence, and it needs to be nervous system related. Is that what I heard you say?
100%. And one thing I think that is low hanging fruit that most doctors aren't doing is go back and actually print out or look at what you had from that first visit. It's like we don't do the work of stewarding that forwards, because half the time even the subjective stuff has changed so much that the person doesn't remember all the things that they told you that first time, and we're not actually bringing it to their attention and saying like, look how, things have changed. Do you remember when you told me this? Oh yeah, that's different. I'm not taking as much Advil, or I'm not having headaches daily, but I forgot to even bring that up because it's not relevant, because 4 weeks from now it's changed again, so we don't steward the conversation. And Bobby, you keep saying the word relationship, and I think for all of us to underline that this is a relationship that we're stewarding.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. So 3 systems in my office that I would say are fundamental to retention. Dr. Lona hit the nail on the head. Number 1 is progress exams and progress reports. And that leads into re-exams and re-reports. So how does that look inside of your office? Number 2 is your table talk. Do you have a properly designed way that facilitates meaningful table talk? Because every single visit, you're either helping somebody work their way into your office, or they're slowly working their way out of the office, okay? And that's because the laws of syntropy and entropy are always undermining and always underlying everything that we do. So quite frankly, your table talk needs to be on point. You need to have a properly designed way to facilitate meaningful table talk. We talk about in the Remarkable Practice a dirty dozen. You also might have your own structure on top of that, but your table talk is your ongoing education process. And then the third system is your better results, faster workshop. Like, do you do a workshop? Because you heard Dr. Lona's story. She had a breakthrough, okay? She created the time and space by listening to a podcast to have a breakthrough, right? I had a breakthrough. I created the time and space. I was listening to a podcast as well that I had a breakthrough. So are you creating the time and space for your patients to have a breakthrough? Because it's more than likely not going to happen tableside. They won't just get up one day after an adjustment and go, oh my goodness, it makes sense. Man, the physical, man, the spiritual gets connected through you, Dr. Bobby. Oh my God, I kind of just got it now, right? Doesn't usually happen like that, right, Lona?
No. Yeah, no, they don't just come off the table thinking that. Although I will say, when you can deliver the goods and give a great adjustment, that speaks volumes as well, because it is a felt sense of like something happened and I am different afterwards. And that is part of like, we just got to cover all our bases. You got to be good clinically. You got to know what to say. You got to have a plan in place. It's a lot of things to keep working on.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts as well for a couple of minutes. Would you say you agree? So table talk, better results, faster workshop, and progress reports and re-reports, are they your kind of big 3 areas for retention education?
For sure. And sometimes people are like, well, what is, depending on how you're wired, right? Like we've talked about a little bit about, being a relational leader versus a transactional leader. If you're someone who hasn't liked scripting, we've talked about scripting a little bit. Table talk sometimes doesn't have to be like, oh, on 3rd visit, I say this, on 7th visit, I say this. It can be what you're noticing on their spine as you're checking them and just teaching them a little bit more. Like, we did this great adjustment here. Those nerves go to the lungs. Like, it's so wonderful that that's moving better. That's a nugget, right? Like, table talk, yes, can be very organized, but it also can be that you're always bringing the conversation back to the nervous system and adaptation and what the adjustment's doing for them. So it can be organic too, and artful.
Yeah, 100%. Massive. But the key takeaway that I think you can hear us both saying is that you want to have put conscious thought and create some structure around this, right? You shouldn't just be like, well, let's just figure out my table talk, from person to person. You get to a point when you get subconsciously competent, right? So if you look at someone like Dr. Lona in practice, you'll be like, oh, great. She can do that. She can on the fly be able to adapt her table talk accordingly. But I guarantee, and tell me if I'm right, Lona, you didn't just by chance get to great table talk. You would have gone through a process where you're like, hang on, I've got to make sure that my table talk improves. Let me learn, let me figure out, let me work out structure. And then you probably got to a point where you're consciously competent. You were great at doing table talk, but you have to think about it, right? And then you got to a point where you're like, okay, now I'm subconsciously competent. I don't have to think about it, and it just becomes an art at that point. Is that accurate?
Yes, very much. And I think the game I used to play with myself was just always bringing it back to chiropractic. So even if someone wants to comment about the weather, you can bring that conversation back to like, oh yeah, we've seen a lot of people today because they were shoveling and they're noticing like their spine took a beating and so they're back in. I'm so glad that you got in today and got adjusted. Like there's always a game of bringing it back to like what you're there for and maybe taking it one step further to teach them something new.
I love that. I love a good game, right? I've heard that one as well. I absolutely love it. All right, guys. So there you have it. So you know what? It is time. However, this is a deep topic. I know people want to go more on retention. So stay tuned because we're going to be coming out with part 2 on our retention series coming up next. Dr. Lona, also had this conversation with you today. Had a great time. Looking forward to part 2 of retention.
See you at the next one.
All right, guys, we'll see you soon. Thanks for listening in today. And of course, remember, if you're loving this, please make sure you subscribe to our podcast. And of course, leave us a 5-star review. Tell us your thoughts. We love getting your feedback, guys. Will you give us your feedback? I hope that you will. And we'll see you at the next one. Catch you soon.
Woo-woo. Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.